Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of KDHL's AM Minnesota program. We have Dusty Dienst in studio. Of course, he was here just last week, I believe, but something very important happened in the last couple of days, and I wanted to get the chief's take on, the fire chief for the city of Faribault, and I really couldn't do it in about a minute or two news story. I didn't think so. Thanks, Dusty, for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Certainly appreciate it. The Minnesota Court of Appeals struck down a mandate that required indoor sprinkler system in homes that were at least 4,500 square feet. We can get more in depth in the next segment, but I'm assuming, probably shouldn't assume anything, that you're not really pleased with this ruling.
Well, it is kind of a step in the wrong direction as far as the fire service is considered. We didn't have a lot of homes in our area that fell into the rule the way it was. So not a major, effect to us, but it started with larger homes and townhomes and those kinds of things, and now all that is, well, townhomes are still part of it, but the single-family dwellings and two-family dwellings that, according to this paper, are no longer needed to be sprinkled. And we were making small strides to get sprinklers in the homes by starting with larger homes, and the future would have been, and still could be, that they would be in all homes someday.
I was just going to mention that because I would guess that's where you guys want to head.
Well, as we've all seen on the news, and we're nationwide, people just don't die and get injured in fires in other facilities. It's usually in homes because that's where we sleep. Typically, schools, malls, shopping places where we work are sprinkled, and plus we're awake, so we have two really good senses and keys on to get out and not get hurt in a fire. When you're at home and you're sleeping, all your senses are asleep, if you will, or not at their highest peak, and that's when you get hurt.
Yeah, it's truly interesting this ruling came down when it did, because we've had the unfortunate couple of fire deaths in the Twin Cities here in the last few days.
Yeah, and this is also October's Fire Prevention Month, and last
Right.
week was Fire Prevention Week, so just kind of ironic how that goes. They come and go in streaks, as we see a lot. We may not have a fire death for quite a while, and then in the last couple of weeks we've had some unfortunate incidents.
Yeah, it's sad, and I don't know if they've determined yet on the St. Paul one whether or not there were working detectors. That was the last I heard. They were trying to determine that.
Right. There are a lot of other systems in homes. Sprinklers are a new one that was being introduced to homes. They're not new by no means. They've been around
Right.
for a long, long time in commercial and other facilities. But getting them to homes is something that we're trying for, because that's where you sleep. That's when you need some help.
You bet. We're going to talk in depth about the ruling. I didn't really think we had enough time to do that here in the first segment, so stay tuned, folks, as we visit with Faribault Fire Chief Dusty Dienst today. A little tired there. I was up to the wee hours of the morning.
Yes.
So Dusty Dienst is with us this morning, and we're going to talk a little bit about this mandate and a couple other things that I know we didn't have time to touch on last week that I was hoping that we could visit with the chief about, and we'll do that today when AMMinnesotaContinue.com. Dusty Dienst is Faribault's fire chief. He was nice enough to come in studio today to talk about this ruling that the Minnesota Court of Appeals handed down, striking down a mandate that had required indoor sprinkler systems in homes that were at least 4,500 square feet. Court ruled that the Department of Labor and Industry, and I'm quoting here from the ruling, failed to establish a record supporting the 4,500 square foot threshold for sprinklers as required by Minnesota law, invalidating the sprinkler mandate. I have no clue how they would validate that.
Well, unfortunately, that's how those laws, we had them for bigger homes, and because there was no reason, I'm assuming here, I know he said not to assume,
Yeah, I know.
but what's good for a big home is good for a little home, so then they just say the whole rule means nothing. So I'm sure next year, when those come up again, and they'll come up with a new rule to try to ease it back in. And I think that's what they were doing here, was easing it in on the bigger homes, and then hopefully heading to get them on all homes someday.
Yeah, the Builders Association of the Twin Cities calls this decision a victory for all Minnesotans who are looking to buy a new home. They say that the mandate was impacting the housing market.
Well, it does add cost to a new home. And I know on my other end of where I came from the electrical business,
Sure.
that, you know, electrically, quite a few mandates were put in place, and they're all safety things, which end up costing more money, so they were adding to the cost of a new home. So that's the angle they were coming at. Our angle is safety, and it's hard to put a price on that, but there is only so much money when you're going to build a home or buy something. So I know I can see where they're coming from, but here again, putting a price on safety is pretty tough.
Well, a 4,500 square foot home, what would you guess? $400,000?
Yeah, I hate. Yeah, it's a big home. I'm not sure what it depends on if it's on a lake or where it's at. But
so, can you give me a general ballpark of what a sprinkler system would cost in a 4,500 square foot home?
Boy, we didn't deal with a whole lot of them. I've heard numbers from $5,000 to $10,000. So you're not sprinkling the entire home. You're sprinkling the habitable areas. So basements that are unfinished, closets, areas where you're not going to be. Do not get sprinkled. Bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens. Those are the sprinklers are really there to help people get out. And yeah, they are probably going to put out most fires, but like we all know, anywhere a sprinkler goes off, the fire department gets called, because sprinklers' main job is to keep the fire from getting larger and allow occupants to get out of the home or out of the facility safe. If the fire's underneath a cabinet or a cupboard or underneath some shelving, it's not going to put it all the way out, but it's going to keep it at bay until the fire department gets there and get the people out of the facility.
So let's say my guess is right, and it could be more than 400,000. Let's say the home valued at $400,000, and let's say we'll take the top end of your figure. It costs $10,000 to sprinkle. I mean, I wonder, is $10,000 investment worth saving $400,000 investment? I mean, that's the question here.
That's a question that we deal with in the fire business all the time. What dollar figure do you put on someone's injury or life?
Well, you can't put a price tag on a life. You're
Correct.
Absolutely right there. I
Correct.
don't think.
That's the struggle. So, you know, the beauty of home building now is, right now we're not going to get sprinklers put in there, but there are a lot of other safety factors put into a home, all the sheetrock, you know, the electrical systems. So there are things that that make a home safe. So a sprinkler is just added protection.
Is there a firefighters association? I mean, a chief of, you know, there's a chief of police association in Minnesota. Is there a firefighters chief association? I'm just curious.
Yes, there's fire chief association, there's firefighters association. Yeah, there's a.
Did they come out with any sort of a comment on this ruling?
I have not heard anything right now at this point.
Okay. You get the call here?
Well, Al Ernst was calling me because we were supposed to go look at, someone wants to put up a haunted house, so we were going to go check that out. But.
Oh, okay. A haunted house?
Well, yeah, someone wants to do a haunted house in town, and obviously when you start putting people into things, we have to make sure that they're safe.
Sure.
So we've been working with this person to find a good spot to do this, make a maze.
This is an actual house they want to
turn. Well, no, I think what we're looking at right now, or what Al's calling about, is a place at the mall, because it has to also meet building codes and safety things. So he's wanting to build something, and that's with rules. That's pretty tough to do. So we encourage them to find a building that's sprinkled and has all the safety measures in it.
And that's the mall.
And that's the mall. So we're going to go check that out, and hopefully we can work with them and make something work so Faribault can have a haunted mall area.
Yeah, sounds like fun. Anyway, concerning this mandate, the chair of the House Job Growth and Energy Affordability Committee, Republican Pat Garofalo, says this statement: today's decision is a victory for common sense. The Dayton administration tried and has now failed to implement this nonsensical requirement in order to appease interest groups. I'm grateful to the courts for once again giving the executive branch a reminder that things like this should be done through legislation rather than abusing agency rulemaking authority.
That's his take on it. You know, we don't know how this all went down. You know, trying to be optimistic here.
I know you're not a politician, Dusty, but
I know. I would like to believe that everybody realizes the benefit that sprinklers provide to all of us. So I think there's maybe more to this than just the the sprinkler and the cost. You know, maybe like he mentions there, maybe the way it went down they didn't like, or someone didn't have their say in this to set these parameters like the 4,500 square foot home. Just assuming, everybody values human lives, and really that's what sprinklers are there for, is to protect that. So I don't know that anybody is totally against having them.
Well, it not only protects human life, but it also protects the property, right?
Yep, protects property. It also protects, selfishly on our end, firefighters, because all fires start small, and if we don't have to go fight the big fire because either we got there soon enough or the sprinkler kept it small, that's safer for us too.
Yeah, and that should be considered in all this.
Yep, they're human lives too.
Yeah, we're talking about more lives here. The comment I get a kick out of, and obviously this is my opinion, Representative Garofalo says today's decision is a victory for common sense. I'll just leave it at that. A victory for common sense. And I don't know, if I was building a $400 and some thousand home, I would think it would make some sense to sprinkle the home, to protect that investment. Yes, to save the lives of other people in the home, but to protect the investment too.
Yeah, and one thing I think we don't want to lose track of here, and education is a big part of all this, is that this rule says that you don't have to. If education gets out there and people know the value of sprinklers, they still can. They don't have to, but I would encourage it.
Yeah, it's still an option.
You still can have somebody put that in. You can retrofit it into your home now. You can put it into your new home, whether you're building a little one or a big one. So this rule says you don't have to, but the option is still there.
Didn't you guys have a training? I seem to recall a trailer when sprinklers they've been out for a long time, like you said, but they were trying to educate the public about sprinklers. And didn't you have a trailer that had sprinklers in it that would show us how they work?
Yeah, I believe the state fire marshal's office has a sprinkler trailer that goes around, and we use it at open houses and at areas where the public can see how good they work. But there's one going around also for firefighters to learn how to control them, shut them off, what to do when they actually are working. Because that is one thing that we need to know how to do when we go to a building, because there's a lot of water that comes out of those things. So one of the things we need to know how to do is to go shut them off. And there's a lot of different systems. They're basically all set up the same to have a little uniformity. So there's a couple different trailers. One that shows how effective they are, and another one that shows us how to handle them when they're going off.
Well, don't they, now I could be way offline here, but don't some of them have some sort of a timing mechanism whereby they shut off after so many minutes?
Nope, they are. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not an expert on every single one, but 99% of sprinklers that I know of, there's really two different systems. There's a dry system, so in areas where it freezes, of course, in Minnesota, so in attics and areas where the sprinklers could be cold, those are actually filled up with air. And then there's the more common one in drop ceilings and insulated areas where they're full of water. They have a little, at the head, they have a little colored, usually they're red, but they have a little colored filament. And they melt out. They're holding all this water pressure back, and they melt out at a certain temperature. And when that temperature goes, that melts out, and the water comes down, and then the little star-shaped thing you see is actually just there for the water that's shooting straight down on them to get spread out in a fan pattern.
And they stay on until you shut them off.
Correct. Yep. So we need to know how to shut them off so that they, there's a lot of water that comes out of there. So when the fire's out, we need to shut that off to now minimize water damage.
Yeah. Well, there's probably quite a bit of water damage, but I'd rather have water damage than have no building.
Correct. You can fix what water wrecks, but what fire and smoke can wreck like a life, you can't fix.
No question about it. Again, last week was Fire Prevention Week. Dusty was with us last week. We had some fire prevention tips. There were some things we didn't get to last week. If I recall right, we were going to have you back on.
Oh, we could go on for hours on this stuff, Gordy.
I know. But you got to get to Al.
Oh, no, I'll call him during the break.
In a few minutes here, you got to get to Al. Just doing the inspection on the haunted house. You talked to Al about this earlier, right?
Correct. He actually went to I'm not sure what was the building inspector meeting Prior Lake yesterday to get this. I don't know if this was the main reason, but it's something that they went over to make sure that everybody knew the rule that you can't force anybody to do this now in these certain structures. So he,
Okay, now hold it here. You said certain structures. I thought the it's just period, no sprinklers.
well, in two-family dwellings and single-family dwellings over 4,500 square feet, you do not need to do them. If I believe in townhomes, apartments, those kind of things, you still need to do sprinklers. So this doesn't wipe
Well,
them out
that would
totally.
be any size, not just 4,500 though, right? In a townhome or an apartment building?
Well, they're different. They're considered. The other ones are considered multi-family dwellings. They still need to be sprinkled. This takes down two-family dwelling and single-family dwellings over 4,500 square feet. Those are the two that were mandated to be sprinkled that are not. So large homes and two-family homes. Fourplexes and apartments, those all still need to be sprinkled.
Okay. Well, guess I'm just a little perplexed as to why that would be.
Well, one of the things we see with a lot of fire code and a lot of the stuff that we deal with is the rules are more lax in your own home. So you can have a grill on your patio or on your deck. You can do certain things. Yep, because it's your own home. So you're really not. If you make a poor decision or do something not wise, I don't want to say the
Well, I'm
word
going
I was
to guess
thinking
my
of.
insurance company wouldn't cover it if my house burned down because I had a grill on my deck.
Yep.
They would?
Well, yeah, because the idea is that you're not affecting other people's lives and property because it's your own home. You start getting into apartment buildings
Well,
or
wait a minute here. If I have company over, I'm affecting other people's lives.
Yep. You are. But in general, the rule states that's why in places of work, in where we go shopping, places of assembly, haunted houses, you're bringing in the public and they have the expectation of being reasonably safe. When it's your own home, you're really only affecting yourself, your family, so there's a little lax rules there. You're not affecting somebody that has no control over your poor decisions.
Yeah. Faribault Fire Chief Dusty Dienst is in studio. We were looking into doing maybe an expansion on the church I attend a few years back, and one of the things, well, I was on a committee that was had to investigate what the cost would be, and ended up being prohibitive. One of the things that we would have been required to do, as I think you just noted, was we would have had to sprinkle.
Correct. Even they take this as serious, and we take this as serious as even if go back to this haunted house because it's good timing. This person was looking at building a temporary structure to set up this haunted house maze in. He would have had to bring in, and I've never seen one, but I believe they have a temporary sprinkler system because you are inviting the public into this area, and they get to be safe when they come there. So sprinklers are that effective, and that here again, that's cost prohibitive, and there's all kinds of rules that are for the right reason. They're for safety of human beings that sometimes make things impossible to do because of what they cost, but it's for the right reason.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of reverse tracking here, I guess you would say. At the time we couldn't afford it, the expansion, and the sprinkle wasn't the only reason, but it did add some cost to the expansion of this facility, and my argument was to the building officials that be, we're not here overnight. Church is always during the day.
Correct. That's the right assumption, and we're talking about home sprinklers. They protect you because you sleep at home and you're not aware when things go wrong. But again, it goes back to the rules that the legislature and I believe insurance companies for a long ways back have noticed. When you bring in hundreds of people into an area, you need to protect them. And we all know that people all can't go out the door at the same time. So if we can't get people out of buildings, we need to keep that building safe until everybody is out of there, and sprinklers will do that.
And in fact, one of our parishioners used to put in sprinkler systems. So isn't this ironic? In retrofitting a building to sprinklers versus building brand new, the cost differential is incredible.
Yeah, you see that anything when it comes to a remodel. We're looking at that with the fire station right now. It's expensive. Anytime you see that a lot in the building. Do you renovate what you have, or do you build new? A lot of times they're not that far off when it comes to cost, because it is tougher to do things in structures that are already standing wall's already there, you gotta tear it down, get stuff inside of it, so.
Speaking of that, where is that, the fire hall?
The city council approved on Tuesday night to send it out to bid. So we're looking at getting all the bid documents done by the end of October, getting it out there for about a month, hopefully receive bids sometime after Thanksgiving. Hopefully we get bids that are favorable and we can move forward, get that all signed hopefully in December, and depending on the contractor, start in December or January is the timeline that was presented by Wold Architects Tuesday night.
And refresh my memory, the cost of this
$657,000.
to
Just a renovation of the living and working quarters. It's not a whole lot to the truck bays. There is an alternate in there to whitewash that, clean it, whitewash it, paint it white. But it's really to reutilize the space that we have. That building was built in 67, 68. They had seven or eight full-time firefighters on that were there 24/7. And now we have 3, so the building was set up for a lot more people there all the time. So the sleeping area is big, the living room area is big. You don't need that much room for 3 firefighters like we had when we had 7 or 8 or 9. So we're moving things around, we're better utilizing our space. Another thing with the building is there's no sprinklers in it, and there will be now. And there's no insulation in it. You lean against that wall in the winter and it's cold. It's brick and then it's block and there's no insulation. So we're gonna become a lot greener there with occupancy sensors, LED lighting. We're gonna fur out the walls, outside walls with some insulation and re-sheet rock it so we are a little more energy efficient.
same with the windows?
Windows are good. Windows have been replaced
Okay.
since. They're not the old windows. So we're good on windows.
That sounds good. It's amazing you can do it for under $1 million.
Well, there's always, here again, it's kind of like in this home building, there's always so much, and there's a lot more things we'd like to do, but you do have to, draw a line somewhere, and we had some goals and objectives that we wanted to meet, and that's what we're doing. And yep, there's always, shoot for the moon and get some more stuff, but we really had to dial back and make sure we were just going to finish and exceed the goals. I would say we're meeting the goals that we set going into it.
Sure. I know one of the areas is going to be a new workout area that the police can come over and use too, right?
Yeah, first responder, I lean towards firefighter, but our cops are our buddies too. So
sure, of course.
we all do the same job, and fitness in our business, and in anybody's business for that matter, but in our business is very important. Our workout area right now is kind of in our sleeping quarters, more of a private area. So our paid-on-call people doesn't always work out for their schedule to come in. So this is going to get it out of that area, downstairs, away from everything else, and people can come in. And yeah, we're inviting the other first responders in our area because we work together. There's nothing better than the camaraderie of working together and playing together, if you will, or working out together. So
sure.
That makes for good relationships.
And it makes perfect sense.
Yes.
To have it in one location like that.
Yep, and we need to, go for employee wellness and fitness. It's good for all. The cancer rates and the heart attack rate among firefighters especially are way high. Now this isn't going to deal with cancer much, but heart attack is a big killer of firefighters. So being in shape, being ready for what you may have to do, jumping out of bed, not stretching, not warming up, not really ready to go and do some pretty physical, intense labor is tough on your body. So
yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. You don't have time to sit around and stretch before you go on a run.
0 to 60, they say, well, you can be sleeping, and the next thing you know, you're driving a big truck, lights and sirens in the dark, cold, rain, you name it. It could happen, and it does happen. So that takes effect on your body over time.
Like the SUV earlier this week that ended up in the holding pond, and of course a couple of divers had to go out and fish out the truck.
Yep, that was sounds like, I just read it, sounds like, good timing on someone that was able to help that person that was going into that sinking slowly into that water, maybe not so slow, maybe faster than.
Well, Sheriff Dunn told us earlier this week there was about 60 seconds after he got the man out of the truck that it completely submerged.
Yeah, and opening that door will speed that up too, you know, because it can be like a bobber. They're not airtight, but as soon as you let that air out of there, it's going to sink fast.
Broke out the back window with a pipe to drag him out that way.
Yep, that's very fortunate. That's good thinking.
Yeah, that man is very, very fortunate that he was right there. Well, thanks, Dusty. I appreciate your coming in, and we'll try and keep people abreast of what's happening here in the 4,500 square foot mandate that was struck down by the Minnesota Court of Appeals. I am going to assume, it doesn't say anywhere here, that somebody will appeal this to the Supreme Court.
Oh, I'm sure this will come back.
The Minnesota Supreme Court, and we'll see what they have to say about it. That concludes today's edition of AM Minnesota.